Stories from Wayside School by Sacher. Calvin. Calvin had a big, round face. Calvin, said Mrs. Jules, I want you to take this note to Miss Olives for me. Miss Olives? Asked Calvin. Yes, Miss Olives, said Mrs. Jules. You know where she is, don't you? Yes, said Calvin. She's on the 19th story. That's right, Calvin, said Mrs. Jules. Take it to her. Calvin didn't move. Well, what are you waiting for? Asked Mrs. Jules. She's on the 19th story, said Calvin. Yes, we have established that fact, said Mrs. Jules. The 19th story, Calvin repeated. Yes, Calvin, the 19th story, said Mrs. Jules. Now take it to her before I lose my patience. But Mrs. Jules, said Calvin. Now, Calvin, said Mrs. Jules, unless you would rather go home on the kindergarten bus. Yes, ma'am, said Calvin. Slowly, he walked out the door. Ha, 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 laughed Terence. Take it to the 19th story. Give it to Miss Olives, hooted Myron. Have fun on the 19th story, called Jason. Calvin stood outside the door to the classroom. He didn't know where to go. As you know, when the builder built Wayside School, he accidentally built it sideways. But he also forgot to build the 19th story. He built the 18th to the 20th, but no 19th. He said he was very sorry. There was also no Miss Olives. Miss Olives taught on the 19th story. Since there was no 19th story, there was no Miss Olives. And besides that, as if Calvin didn't have enough problems, there was no note. Mrs. Jules had never given Calvin the note. Boy, this is just great, thought Calvin. Just great. I'm supposed to take a note that I don't have to a teacher that doesn't exist who teaches on a story that was never built. He didn't know what to do. He walked down to the 18th story, then back up to the 20th, then back down to the 18th, and then back up to the 20th. There was no 19th story. There never was a 19th story, and there never will be a 19th story. Calvin walked down to the administrator's office. He decided to put the note in Miss Olives' mailbox, but there wasn't one of those either. That didn't bother Calvin too much, however, since he didn't have a note. He looked out the window and saw Louis, the yard teacher, shooting basketballs. Louis will know what to do, he thought. Calvin went outside. Hey, Louis, Calvin called. Hi, Calvin, said Louis. He tossed him the basketball. Calvin dribbled up and took a shot. He missed. Louis tipped it in. Do you want to play a game? Louis asked. I don't have time, said Calvin. I have to deliver a note to Miss Olives up on the 19th story. Then what are you doing all the way down here? Louis asked. There is no 19th story, said Calvin. Then where's Miss Olives? Asked Louis. There is no Miss Olives, said Calvin. What are you going to do with the note? Asked Louis. There is no note, said Calvin. I understand, said Louis. That's good, said Calvin, because I sure don't. It's very simple, said Louis. You're not supposed to take no notes to no teachers. You already haven't done it. Calvin didn't understand. I'll just have to tell Mrs. Jules that I couldn't deliver the note, he said. That's good, said Louis. The truth is always best. Besides, I don't think I understand what I said either. Calvin walked back up the 30 flights of stairs to Mrs. Jules' class. Thank you very much, Calvin, said Mrs. Jules. Calvin said, but Mrs. Jules interrupted him. That was a very important note, and I'm glad I was able to count on you. Yes, but you see, said Calvin, you delivered the note to Miss Olives on the 19th story. Asked Jason, how did you do it? What do you mean, how did he do it? Asked Mrs. Jules. He gave Miss Olives the note. Some people, Jason, are responsible. But you see, Mrs. Jules, said Calvin, the note was very important, said Mrs. Jules. I told Miss Olives not to meet me for lunch. Don't worry, said Calvin. She won't. Good, said Mrs. Jules. I have a coffee can full of Tootsie Roll Pops on my desk. You might help yourself to one for being such a good messenger. Thanks, Calvin, but really, it was nothing. Myron had big ears. He was elected class president. The children in Mrs. Jules' class expected him to be a good president. Other presidents were good speakers. Myron was even better. He was a good listener. But he had a problem. He didn't know what a class president was supposed to do. So he asked, "What am I supposed to do?" "It's a difficult job," said Mrs. Jules, "but you can do it. You must turn the lights on every morning and turn them off at the end of the day." "What?" said Myron. "As a class president, you must learn to listen," said Mrs. Jules. "I'll repeat myself only one more time. You must turn the lights on every morning." "I heard you the first time," said Myron. "It just doesn't sound like much of a job." "It certainly is," said Mrs. Jules. "Without light, I can't teach, and the children can't learn. Only you can give us that light. I think it is a very important job." "I guess so," said Myron. He wasn't convinced. "Here, let me show you how to work a light switch," said Mrs. Jules. "I already know how," said Mrs. Jules. "I've been turning lights on and off all my life." "Very good," said Mrs. Jules. "You'll make a fine president." Myron wanted to be the best president ever, but it was such an easy job, he thought, that anybody could do it. When school let out that day, Myron stayed behind. He turned out the lights by flicking the switch down. "Excellent," said Mrs. Jules. On his way home, Myron heard a horrible noise. First it was a loud screeching, then a sharp squeal, a roaring engine, and then a very faint sound of a girl crying. Myron ran to see what happened. Dana was bent over in the middle of the road. "What's the matter?" asked Myron. "My dog, Pugsy, was hit by a car," Dana cried. "Who did it?" asked Myron. "I don't know," Dana sobbed. "They sped away." "Well, that's not important," said Myron. "We've got to try to save Pugsy." Pugsy lay unconscious on the street. Myron carefully picked her up. He carried her 2 miles to the vet. Dana cried at his side. "Don't worry, Dana," said Myron. "She'll be all right." But he wasn't really so sure. He gave Pugsy to the vet, walked Dana home, then walked home himself. Dana was so upset that she forgot to thank him. Myron didn't mind. He thought that was what being a class president was all about. The next morning, before he went to school, Myron went to Dana's house. Pugsy was there. She seemed all right. Dana petted her. Pugsy licked her face. "See, Myron, she's all right," said Dana. "The vet said that you brought her in just in time." "Hi, Pugsy," said Myron. He petted her. Pugsy bit his hand. "I guess she doesn't know you," said Dana. "She was unconscious yesterday when you saved her life." Dana's mother put some medicine and a Band-Aid on Myron's hand. Then she drove the children to school. They were late. They ran up the stairs to Miss Jules' class. The room was completely dark. "It's about time you got here, Myron," said Mrs. Jules. "We have no lights." "Why didn't somebody else just turn them on?" asked Myron. "Because you're class president," said Mrs. Jules. "Show Stephen how to work the lights. From now on, he will be class president." Myron showed Stephen how to turn the lights on. He flicked the switch up. At the end of the day, Myron showed Stephen how to turn the lights off. He flicked the switch down. After a week, Stephen finally caught on. He made a good president. The lights were on every morning. Myron, who was president for only one day, was the best president in history of Wayside School. It was just that nobody knew it. Mauricia liked ice cream. She was sweet and pretty and could beat up any boy in Mrs. Joel's class. Everybody liked Mauricia, except Kathy, but she didn't like anybody. Mauricia only liked ice cream. Every day Mauricia brought in an ice cream cone to school and kept it in her desk until lunchtime. At first she brought chocolate ice cream every day, but she soon got tired of chocolate ice cream, so she started bringing vanilla. But she got tired of vanilla too. Then she got tired of strawberry, fudge ribble, butter pecan, pistachio, and burgundy cherry in that order. And then a terrible thing happened. Mauricia got tired of ice cream. By that time, her desk was a mess. Everything in it was sticky. Everybody liked Mauricia, but Mauricia didn't like anything. Miss Jules hated to see Mauricia unhappy. I don't understand it, Mrs. Jules and Mauricia. There just aren't any good flavors anymore. So Mrs. Jules worked all night. The next day, she brought in new flavor of ice cream for Mauricia. It was Mauricia flavored ice cream. Everybody will like it, thought Mrs. Jules, because everybody likes Mauricia. Thought Mrs. Jules, because everybody likes Mauricia. Here you are, Mauricia, said Mrs. Jules. Mauricia flavored ice cream. Everybody gathered around as Mauricia tasted it. They hoped she liked it. Mauricia took a lick. Well, said Mrs. Jules. Mauricia took another lick. Well, asked the class. This ice cream has no taste, said Mauricia. It doesn't taste bad, but it doesn't taste good. It doesn't taste like anything at all. Mrs. Jules was heartbroken. Here, let me try it, said Todd. He tasted it. You're crazy, Mauricia, he said. This is the best tasting ice cream I've ever eaten. Try some, Dee. It's delicious, said Dee. It's so sweet and creamy. She passed it around the room. Oh, it is so good, said Leslie. I think it tastes terrible, said Kathy. I don't understand it, said Mauricia. I don't taste a thing. Mrs. Jules slapped herself in the face. Oh, I've made a big mistake, Mauricia. Of course you can't taste anything. It's Mauricia flavored ice cream. It's the same taste you always taste when you're not tasting anything at all. So the next day, Mrs. Jules brought in Joe flavored ice cream. Mauricia liked it. So did everybody else. Joe thought it had no taste. Everybody liked Mauricia. Mauricia only liked Joe. Following day, Mrs. Jules brought in Ron flavored ice cream. Ron thought it had no taste, but everybody else loved it. Everybody liked Mauricia. Mauricia only liked Joe and Ron. By the end of the month, Mrs. Jules brought in 27 new flavors of ice cream, one for each member of the class. Everybody liked Mauricia, and Mauricia liked everybody. They all tasted so good, all except Kathy. That is, Kathy flavored ice cream tasted a little bit like old Bolonga. Everybody still agreed that Mauricia flavored ice cream was the best, except Mauricia. She liked Todd ice cream the best. This turned out to be a problem. Every once in a while, Miss Mauricia would try to take a bite out of Todd's arm in order to get that very special flavor.